gain. I mean, it could be a loss.
But I hear a lot of could be's, so we really don't know.
We don't know. But that's why we need an economic impact study.
Anybody like to respond?
Yeah, I'll just respond briefly. I think one of the important things to keep in mind is that while there is a direct cost to providing any benefit, obviously there would be for this, if the business also has to pay a substitute worker particularly, there are also benefits to the business. And those are very well documented throughout the literature. And those include the reduced spread of disease in the workplace. They include greater productivity by workers. And one of the key cost savers for business is reduced turnover of staff. And turnover is very costly to business in terms of recruiting, training, and the lost productivity that happens with a new employee in place. There's also an additional option available for employers besides shifting costs among employees, and that is modest increases in prices. And we're talking about very modest when the average usage is 2 to 3 days a year by employees. So if a slice of coconut cream pie has to go from $9 a slice, which it's being charged now, to $9.10, then our customer's really going to drive across the 520 bridge, pay a toll to avoid that cost.
I'll admit that I paid almost $5 for a latte at Starbucks yesterday.
All right, would you like to say something else? Go ahead.
Yes, I mean, I don't think we want to get into the business of regulating and telling each individual small business how they ought to run their business. I mean, businesses are just too different from each other for city council to get into the business of doing that. That's essentially what you're doing here, trying to tell them to dictate what their prices
We'll
are
have
to
an
be.
opportunity for the audience here coming up. I know emotions run strong on both sides of this, so I'm sorry. You were saying?
Did you want to finish?
Did you want to finish? I'm sorry.
No, the point. I made the point.
Okay, all right. Well, let's talk about some more of those costs. So we're going to hear from Marilyn and Carl about some of the data on this proposal, cost in particular. Carl, you conducted a study for the Washington Policy Center that estimates cost to implement paid sick leave between $30 million and $90 million. Is it possible these numbers are over or underestimated?
Well, again, to pick up where David left off, we don't know. I mean, I simply took a look at Bureau of Labor Statistics analysis of what it costs to provide this benefit and use Maryland and these guys' own numbers on how many workers are apparently out here in Seattle that do not have paid sick leave. I just put 2 and 2 together. So 30 million is, I mean, every industry is different. Depending on the type of industry and the size of business, that determines how much it costs to provide this benefit. So 30 million is on the low end, $90 million on the high end. That does not take into account indirect costs. It does not take into account a lot of the things that a full economic impact study would take a look at, which is one of the reasons why I think we need to do that. And the other thing is, nothing happens in a vacuum. This will have impact based on what other what the state government has done, what other local governments has done. So, for instance, the Urban Institute study on New York City, when they took a look at this issue, said that this accounts for about 0.3% of payroll, which would be a 0.3% increase. That's not very much. But take a look at what Washington State Legislature did last year to the service industry. They increased the B&O tax service rate by 0.3% or 0.3 of 1%. The same exact thing. So you'd be doubling this impact just in the last 2 years on the business bottom line. Again, nothing happens in a vacuum. And Washington State, and this is a jumping off point to a very larger discussion that we don't need to have here today. Washington State and City of Seattle tax unprofitable businesses because of the gross receipts tax. So you can be losing money and have the cost of business going up and up, depending on what the city does, or the county does, or the state does. So I think we need to take that stuff into account before we move forward.
I would like to do a follow-up question, though. How do you think businesses, employees, and consumers will account for these additional costs? I heard talk already about just passing the additional cost on to consumers with an extra quarter on the piece of pie or something. So you're making it sound like this would all be felt by the employers, but don't they have recourse for passing?
Some employers will be able to pass this cost through to the consumer, so now you and I are paying for this. Some probably will not be able to incorporate this into their business model, will have to eat it, which if you are running a small business, particularly retail or a couple other businesses out there with very low profit margins, 1-2%, this will negatively impact you even more so. So there's no one right answer as to how a business will incorporate this cost, whether you're talking about compliance costs or payroll cost increases, but it could be all over the board.
Okay. Jody, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, we've been offering paid time off in my business for the last 3 years to all employees. And what it's done for my business is that it has increased our longevity of employee. Our average time spent at Cupcake Royale in our industry turns over 100% every year. We have an average life of 3 years for our employees. It's increased their loyalty to our company because it shows that we care deeply about them. Because if we care about them, they care about our customers and their ability to serve our customers. And what's that done for that? What that has done for our business has made us a stronger business. So I have not seen any increase in actual costs. I also provide healthcare and other things. These are costs that I think are the right things to do for business, and we're taking care of the people that are taking care of our business.
David, did you want to say something?
Jody and Cupcake Royale ought to be, should be commended for their efforts. Not every business in Seattle is Cupcake Royale or is run by someone so astute. Every business is different. It's different. They have different profit margins. Some business owners have taken losses for years in hopes that maybe this will be the year I can finally take a salary or take some wages home if I turn a profit. Every business is different, and that's part of the point of our argument against this kind of one-size-fits-all. They say it's not a one-size-fits-all, and they try to cast it as a flexible ordinance, but again, it really is not. It's tiered, but it's not flexible. The other point I wanted to make is that, again, the responses by every business is going to be different because of the way it's structured. And for those of you who remember Economics 101, there's something called the elasticity of demand. And that's going to, basically that factor is how flexible, what is the demand's response? What is your market's response to a change in the pricing? For things like cigarettes and chocolate and perhaps portable electronics, that's not very elastic, right? You can change the price all you want, people still buy it. But that's not the business that we're all in. Everybody has a different market that they're facing, and that's why it's so important to maintain a flexible workplace policy and to allow the HR professionals to do their job and to make those decisions. That's why folks study, go to school, and become certified as HR professionals. And there's a whole society of these HR professionals running around behind closed doors making these decisions and helping employers meet their objectives.
Well, let's...
Can I give another perspective from a small business owner?
Sure, 30 seconds.
And I'm particularly the issue in regards to commission-based seasonal employees. I feel like I'm able to compensate my people very generously and fairly under the commission basis that I have, and I have a tremendous loyalty of these seasonal employees who come back year after year. I have about a 95% return rate, which is highly unusual in my industry. This additional cost, if I was faced with this additional cost, in this very tight economy, raising prices is not an option. We've raised prices as much as we can. We are really up against it in terms of continued growth and sustainability of our business. So the way I would have to pass on this additional cost is probably to abandon my commission basis for compensating my seasonal employees and go to a more predictable flat rate, which I know would significantly cut into my retention of my valued employees.
Okay. Marilyn, let's talk a little bit more about some costs. We're talking a lot about hidden costs. What about the hidden cost to the healthcare system when people don't have paid sick days? Can you address that? There has been some research on that, I understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to understand that our current system that we have been operating on for some time now has a lot of costs to it as well. And the people who are disproportionately bearing those costs are the people who can least afford it in our society. It's low-income workers and their children who are bearing the largest share of the cost, though all of us have some of the cost. So for low-income workers and their families, who are the ones who are most likely not to get any kind of paid sick leave, it means a loss of family income. That means they spend less in their local communities and at your local businesses. It means they can't build up savings for when something goes wrong and they need to have an emergency, which means that if something goes wrong, they might end up losing their home or losing something really valuable to them. Their children can't do as well in school, as we've heard Robin testify quite eloquently. And when children can't stay home when they're sick, don't get well as quickly, maybe an older sibling has to stay home with a younger sibling because the parent can't stay